feel weird. I'm the only, Caleb's the only one with a picture up here, so I figure I should put a picture of a cat.
If I log in through my phone, I get a picture, but since I'm going through my computer, I don't.
I don't even know how it did that. So this is connected through my school account, and I guess it's through my school email, and it just uses this picture for everything, which is funny because this is not even the picture I have on my email. So I don't know where this picture comes from. Like, I don't know what weird cyber gremlin reached out into the ether and decided that this should be my screen picture, because I don't even know that it's one I would have chosen.
Oh, yes, it is.
I look like I look like I want to sell you a vacuum cleaner or a Freedom phone. Y'all ready to get this party started?
Yep.
I'm excited. Are you excited? All tingly and stuff. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 188 of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. As usual, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And if you heard a little bit of that intro there, you heard a strange, but hopefully not an unfamiliar voice. We are joined today by a dear friend who is going to help us in our annual halftime report recap. And that is Mr. Steve Morey from the Comic Book Bears podcast. How you doing, brother?
Hey, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Doing great. Fantastic, man. Thank you for jumping on with us to help us recap some books. So for those of you who have listened to the show as we have been going on for this little 188 episode ride, you know that every year, like all podcasts, we do an end of the year recap. We talk about our favorite books, the best of, yada, 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 in our not so humble opinions of the prior year. But unlike a lot of other podcasts, we decided a long time ago when we first started this off, why wait 12 months, to tell people what we're really digging. What if we did a halftime report? And so we've carried that tradition on. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's August and the eighth month is not the halftime mark. We're slow and it's in the middle of a pandemic, so you're gonna have to forgive us and just deal with it, because this is where we're at in life. So we decided to all get together. We invited Steve over to come jump in the sandbox with us and talk about at least 5 of our favorite books. I think we each picked 5 titles, and we're just going to run down them. Now, I can't speak for the other guys, but for me, this list is it's not a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, I'm not going from my least favorite. These are just 5 books that I'm really, really enjoying that are on my short list for what will be my favorite books of the year. How did you guys? I'll start with Craig. How did you pick your books, bud?
I did. Did I put them in order? Is that what you're asking? Or
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have them in order, but I don't necessarily have to do them in order. And then I didn't necessarily pick what I thought was the quote unquote best book, but I picked my favorite books.
Yeah, same. Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I did not number mine I did not weight mine. I just picked the top 5 books that I'm enjoying the most.
Okay.
Right on. Steve?
Absolutely same as Matt here. It's just basically in no definitive order whatsoever. Just individual issues that I thought were absolutely stellar, and series that are just making me smile every time I every month I pick up an issue.
Yeah, that's me. And for me, you guys know me, so the art played a big role in mine too. Like, there's at least one book on my list that I'm enjoying other stories better, but the art is just a game. It's some of my favorite art of the year, so that's what brought it to my list. But so we did not pick any type of order in which we'll go through this thing. And so I think we should just jump into it. Craig, why don't you start off? What is your first book that's on your halftime report, man?
Yeah, if you've been listening to this show at all, this really isn't going to come as a surprise to anyone. But I picked Something is Killing the Children from Boom Studios. James Tinian the Fourth, Werther Deladera, and Miguel Muerto. You like how I got that accent in there? When a monster attacks a young boy and his friends, a small town is left in disbelief, especially since only the kids can see the monster. Soon, Erica Slaughter, a member of a secret order of monster hunters that kill and hide the existence of monsters, show up to rid the town of their problems. Erica does part of the job, but when she refuses to kill anyone that knows of the monsters, her and her order become at odds with each other. So there's a brief synopsis. This book is very well drawn, very well told. The story structure, as you would expect from a Tinian book, is just fantastic.
Now, I think a lot of folks agree with you on that. So I don't know if any of you guys saw it, or even if really you care about such things, but James actually won like best writer at the Eisners last weekend. Mm-hmm. So he is just tearing it up. Like, the dude is making a huge name for himself.
And this book's actually getting a spinoff. It's moving into a new story right now. And out of that new story, we're getting a spinoff called Slaughterhouse. Or House of Slaughter. So there will be 2 ongoing titles for this book.
Huh. Nice.
Wow.
That's cool. I'm trying to think of the last time a book like that had a spinoff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, we invited you to the party, so I didn't want to make you jump in first, but now that Craig's tipped his toe in the water and he says it's fine, what's on your list, brother? What's your first book?
I don't know. It's a little cold. Oof. No, I've been a fan of this book since it first came out as a surprise release a couple of years ago. Robert Kirkman decided to drop just an interesting bomb on comic shops, and provided multiple copies of a book called Die, 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 with written by him and drawn by Chris Burnham. Bizarre book, lots of blood, lots of gore, ridiculous situations, completely unexpected. And, unfortunately, because it was not the kind of book that you could just look in your previews and order, I think a lot of people were very confused about its existence, how to get it. And I think that kind of, unfortunately, colored a lot of people's opinions of the book very early on, so that it may not have gotten to the heights that it probably could have for a book this wacky and crazy and insane. And it went on hiatus, for quite a bit of time last year during the pandemic. But early this year, it came out with its last issue, or at least the last issue released. May not be the final issue, but issue number 14. And again, Kirkman and Burnham, with also Scott Gimple and Nathan Fairburn. This book, for a wrap up, if it's a final ever issue, it's one hell of a final issue. If it's just an interesting stopping off point before the next major storyline, it is an excellent pit stop. This particular issue, not to spoil too much of it, but this particular issue shows that Earth is not alone in the galaxy, which we've gotten hints of throughout the rest of the series. But in this one, they very clearly are heading out into deep space on a mission. And basically that mission is the defender of the Earth has to defeat several champions, I think about 8 to 9 champions, put out by several other alien civilizations, to prove that the Earth is, allowed for another 4 years to be independent from the galactic community, so that people on Earth don't need to know that there are aliens out there, and aliens do not then get the right to divvy up Earth's resources and humans, etc. And who is the defender of the Earth? Well, every 4 years, it is the American president. And interestingly enough, in this issue, the American president in the year of 2021 is President Barack Obama. And that is because they staged a coup very early on in Trump's presidency in this comic book universe, And they joke about it very quickly. They're like, can you imagine if that buffoon was set to defend the Earth? I mean, he can't even get wet in the rain. And basically, it's so Barack Obama could just go ahead and defend Earth one more time before handing over the reins to someone else. And this issue is just an insane ride. I mean, that premise alone is just it's ridiculous. But when they get to the galactic fight ring in the center of the universe, basically every kind of cosmic being that you can think of from every single comic book series or TV series or pop culture reference is there watching the fights. You've got Darth Vader in the stands. You've got Galactus in the stands. You've got Alf. You've got just basically everybody that you can think of. Silver Surfer. Dark Side. Basically everybody's here in one of the most beautiful splash pages that I've ever seen from Chris Burnham. And it's just, it is just absolutely insane. Batshit insane. Excuse my French.
Oh, no, please.
But
more French.
Just the sight of, Obama in boxing trunks, punching out weird multi-headed aliens with two giant gauntlets, one that says hope and the other one that says change on it, is just absolutely batshit insane and wonderful. And it has a pretty uplifting ending, I think, for this book. So again, if it is the final issue of Die, which who knows, because nobody knows when this book is ever coming out or what the future is for it. It definitely is a smash hit. So one of my favorite books of the year, very early on.
I have to say, I read the first story arc of this book, and I did not see it going to an intergalactic space battle is part of the premise of this story. So
there's all sorts of things that happen in there. Quadruplets that are all secret, agent kung fu fighters, Russian agents defecting, obviously aliens. It's just the book itself goes to some very strange places, but as a single issue, if you were just to pick this up, I think anybody would have a hell of a time reading it. Even not knowing what's going on, it does a pretty good job of setting up an interesting mood and situation, and doesn't disappoint.
So, Steve, you mentioned the way that this book started out as kind of a, they kept it a secret and just sent it to comic shops. Kirkman is one of the best in the business at drumming up like attention for at least his first issues. He's done this in several different ways to get people to draw to it, whether it's a surprise book, whether it's the standard way of getting people, like getting the engine revved up and getting people wanting to buy it. He's one of the best. I always felt kind of weird about the way that he did this book because I thought it was a good plan on paper. But I don't think they accounted for the speculation market and the speculation market as it's attached specifically to Kirkman. Because I mean, as soon as it came out, this book that they gave for free to comic shops, other comic shops were like, selling it for $30. And and like you said, you already had the issue with being able to pre-order it, which was impossible. People not knowing it was a series that they would want to be on, and I think that just killed a lot of momentum for the book. Because people just couldn't get their hands on the first issue. Now, I will say, like, shout out to our local comic shop, Kapow over in Sherwood. They didn't do that. They just, they took their copies and they sold it for those first couple of weeks, just as they should have. And so I think that, like Craig said, he read the book, and I don't know if Matt read it or not, but it, it gave people the chance to onboard for that series.
Well, he had tied the volumes that stores were getting to pre-order volumes for Oblivion Song, which was also released around the same time. So, as long as people were subscribing, or at least, and that's how my store did it, A Pennyworths in Matthew, Charlotte. They basically, checked who was subscribed to Oblivion Song and would make sure that everybody got an issue of Die #1 in their box, which was great. That was how I did it. And then anything else just ended up on the shelf, which immediately was just pulled bare by speculators. So, something like this, I was very grateful for my LCS as well, being able to, to sell it and, make sure that at least the common reader, like the normal customers, were getting copies of it.
Right.
You know,
The
just
people
to
who
try
are
it
going to
out.
come back.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I was one of the few, I guess, who just absolutely love the best shittery of it. And I think it's the third time I've said it. It and decided to stick with it. So I'm glad I did, because I don't think you know, by the time issue 14 came out, I think my store is really only ordering you know, for the subscribers as well as for you know, the few, you know, just a few extra shelf copies. Because it really didn't sell too well. I think a lot of people got a bad taste in their mouth from the first, you know, the first couple of releases, and you know, or just it wasn't the subject matter they want to continue with. So
Yeah,
you know, unfortunately.
well, I love that you love it. Well, we're gonna jump. We're still on the first book, so we're gonna jump over to Matt now. I want to say I'm part of me in my heart of hearts is going to be a little disappointed if Matt doesn't try to sneak in a '90s #1 into this.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't. Yeah, definitely would not qualify as one of the best things I've read this year. Any of my '90s comics. So yeah, fear not, or prepare for disappointment, whichever you prefer. The first book on my list I want to talk about, as far as one of the best books that I'm enjoying for the year, is from Marvel. It's X-Force, written by Benjamin Piercy, and mostly the pencils have been done by Joshua Cassara. They've had a few guest pencilers, but this is a series that I look forward to every time it comes out. It's one of those that I anticipate the most. X-Force is, of course, essentially like the CIA/Black Ops division of X-Men. The storyline itself is good, but that's not what is the most compelling about the series. The most compelling thing about the series is the character interaction, the way the characters interact within themselves. Benjamin Piercy is just knocking it out of the park with character-driven stories within this storyline. It reminds me a lot about like the way Jason Aaron writes. You know, they're both very, very good at character-driven stories.
Right.
So every time, you know, the normal cast of characters in X-Force is great, and every time another character makes an appearance, I'm always really excited because I'm going to see, well, how is he going to write Colossus? How is he going to write Storm? And all these other characters that kind of come in and out of the storyline. So this one, and Joshua Cassara's pencils are great. I mean, they have a very, very organic look to it. His penciling is very asymmetrical and very organic. It really stands out apart from a lot of other artists. So the uniqueness of the look of the book, I really dig on too. A lot of violence. You know, I mean, that's what they do. They're Black Ops. So yeah, this one I always really look forward to picking up.
Now, so this is not one that I'm reading ongoing, but because of the way you talk about it, and because of some recent events, I actually did pick up like the last couple of issues, and I'm about to dive into it. Who's on that team now? Who are kind of some of the main characters in the focal point of that book?
Obviously Wolverine, Kid Omega, Domino, Beast. They're the main characters of the book, and then you've got some others that come in and out of the storyline. Nice.
Yeah, and is Ben Percy? He's the one who's writing the ongoing Wolverine book right now, which I am reading, or at least he was. And
yeah, man, he is.
I don't know if that ties into what's going on in X-Force or not, but it's just solid. Like,
yeah, it does. It ties into the X storyline somewhat loosely. Most of it's not like, you know, pivotal to the X storyline, but Benjamin Piercy is interesting. His first Wolverine, I believe, may have been his first Wolverine story I know was actually The Long Night, the podcast, the Wolverine podcast.
Yeah.
He wrote that, and it became a surprise hit, and that's how he got the gig writing X-Force, the Wolverine series, and so on.
Nice. Did you get a chance to listen to that? I haven't tapped in.
I did. Yeah, it is a fun story. It's good. They did a follow-up to it. It's you know, what you're listening to though is like a play. You're listening to like a play. And I'm much more of it's just an aesthetic choice for me. I like, you know, either interviews or documentary type podcast. Listening to like stories being told over podcast, it's not really my thing. But this one was good enough that I wanted to finish it. It's definitely worth a listen.
Very cool. Either are words. I can say them. That's a thing. Steve or Craig, are either one of you reading X-Force?
I am, and I pretty much second everything Matt said. Fantastic book, fantastic story. The interactions between Wolverine and Kid Omega are worth reading the book alone.
Yeah, those are standout. They're amazing.
Yeah. I'm also reading this, and I give Benjamin Piercy a lot of credit for tackling some very interesting, I'd say some pretty heavy political and social topics in requisite X-Men fashion with the entire country being taken over, that particular country that they go into in South America, taken over by basically a floronic life form that Beast then manipulates. It just that whole storyline that continues to sow seeds for later issues and finally for even the Hellfire Gala. Creates a lot of trouble for X-Men and Krakoa just because, Beast is gonna beast and do some really terrible science. But yeah, it's a really interesting book. I really do enjoy it a lot.
Nice. I gotta go get caught up. Shame on me. It's my fault. So my first book on the list is a book that I know 3 out of the 4 folks on here have read. And that is, it comes from a studio that I think a lot of us have kind of fallen in love with this past year and a half. And the studio is called Ablaze Comics, and they kind of just came out of nowhere. And the way that they came out of nowhere is they decided that the way that our boy Conan was being handled at other places really wasn't up to what Robert E. Howard would have wanted, and who better to tell Robert E. Howard stories than Robert E. Howard himself. So Ablaze Comics got together and they came out with a series of books called The Cimmerian, and they are taking adventures as written by Robert E. Howard and giving them to artists who then break them down and draw them. But it's these classic Robert E. Howard stories. And this past year, a book came out and actually just wrapped up. It's a 3-issue book, like most of them are, but that is really the standout. All of them have been good so far, but this one just is really the pinnacle. And it's The Frost Giant's Daughter. And I know especially Matt gushed about this. But it's now, as far as Conan canon goes, it's one of my favorite stories of all time. And the art is done by an artist that I wasn't familiar with named Robin Recht, Recht, is I think how you pronounce that. Incredible, just this very, very European in layouts and in storytelling sensibilities. Thin lines, everything is sensual, just the way that they lay it out on the page. And the story, for those of you who have read it, I think it was originally, I don't know that it ever came out while Robert E. Howard was alive. I think it was one of those stories that was buried underneath something. The earliest I could see it, and Matt could probably very easily correct me on this, was it was printed in the 80s in a magazine. But the story is, Conan wakes up and after a fierce battle, and he's, just in the middle of carnage. He's, death and is just all around him. And it's a very, as many times Conan fights in the snow, it's a very frigid environment. And so, the battle is over. He really doesn't know how he got there, but he's overcome with emotion, and he doesn't really know what to do. And he's a little, he's on his heels. He doesn't really know how he got there, what's going on. And then out of nowhere, this, just gorgeous, voluptuous, redheaded woman comes out of the mist, so to speak. And she's gorgeous. She's beautiful, almost supernaturally so. And the way that the story goes about, he is chasing her. He is trying to get her because, we all know what Conan likes to do in his off time, and he likes to drink and fuck, and there is no drink to be had. So he is trying to get to her, but he can't, because there's almost, like I said, this supernatural, just supernaturalness to the whole environment that he finds himself in, and he finds himself, two titans attack him, and he doesn't realize that who he's chasing after is the frost giant's daughter. It's Ymir, who, famous from Conan lore, and she is leading him into a trap, or at least she's testing him, testing his wiles and his wits. Some of the most gorgeous landscapes came out of this book that I've ever seen in comic book form. There is a spread where you think Conan is down and out, and he's just below a cliff where she's hovering over him. The way that Ablaze published, like, they promote themselves, they promote themselves as being quote unquote Robert E. Howard uncensored. Until this story, I thought that was kind of them just patting themselves on the back, because there really wasn't anything that would have needed to be censored in any of their books. I certainly thought that they could have gone, if they're going to promote themselves as uncensored, that they could have gone, more than what they had in these books. In this one, you get, you get full frontal. You get sexual, like Conan's sexuality. Or as far as the sexuality of the frost giant's daughter is just in full display. You see her in all of her naked glory, and they really did push the envelope. I think I still think that they could have gone further, but they pushed the envelope visually, but they did it without crossing a line. Like, it's not pornography. It's tastefulness in the way that it depicts the woman, the frost giant's daughter, and how she's visually promoted. While it's still sexual, you still get Conan, being very lustful, but the way that Robin Reich just laid it down on the page, just made that story sing, and it feels like exactly what it is. It feels like a Robert E. Howard story, like those visions that play in your mind when you read a Robert E. Howard story. Like, somehow this clicks. This is literally what I saw in my head, having read some of these stories way back in the day, reading Robert E. Howard short stories. So if you miss this series, like I said, it's 3 issues. You can go check it out. It's easily some of the best art that I've seen this year. And they are continuing with these stories and with the adaptations of them. So in general, the Sumerian catalog is going to be my number 5, but specifically this frost giant's daughter story. Did I lose everyone? What happened?
No, that's
sorry.
we're just still stunned.
Oh,
Yeah.
Stunned by the lustful nature of Conan. No,
Yeah.
I think that funny enough, with Conan being an American invention, or an American author's invention, it seems to really come to life with a lot of European interpretation. I mean, the films were very European in their in their production, but also it sounds like Ablaze just really hit on some kind of style that it just sings in.
Well, they're not, what it feels like is they're not trying to be too mainstream, I guess, as they're getting risky with their art styles. Because some of the art styles I didn't really feel like fit a Conan book at all, but it's all over the board. And this one that Caleb just talked about felt right on with Conan. The one, the current story that they're adapting, the Man-Eaters of Zambula.
Yeah.
First issue was amazing. Oh, it's so good. Feels just classic Conan. The one that Caleb talked about, I will say, is the one Conan story that inarguably, I think, ages extremely poorly. So there's some stuff that was left out of the adaptation that is extremely problematic.
Right. Yeah.
And whenever it was being adapted, I was like, whoa, how are they going to handle this? Because it does not depict our boy in a good light.
No, they left some stuff. Well, and so not only that one, but the one that they just recently wrapped up, what is it? The Man-Eater, or the something on the moon, Shadows on the Moon storyline. if you go back and read that old script, it gets a little racist, and by a little,
Oh well,
a lot.
a lot of it. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much every Conan story had either upfront or subversive racism. Yeah,
and
every one of them did.
Yeah, there's some lack of consent issues with in the original story for Frost Giant's daughter. If that's, I think that's what you're talking about.
Lack of consent, that is putting it very gingerly.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm trying. Yeah, I'm trying to be ginger about it, just because it's such a topic that, like I said, doesn't come into the actual book as it's depicted from the Ablaze comic. But
what do redheads have to do with it?
Yeah. I mean, why can't you just be Marianne about it?
She is. Get off the island, Steve. But no. So yeah. But this book. It's interesting because when I think about Conan stories, like Frazetta always comes to mind, and I think that's true for all of us and for most people, just because of the way that he lays things out. But Steve, I think Steve did hit on something as far as the way that the Europeans look at this stuff. There's such a Nordic aspect to a lot of the Robert E. Howard stories that I think that, though, I don't know if it's just something about people who are dipped into fantasy or people who are maybe the bande dessinée that's coming out of France right now and that's coming out of the Netherlands. I don't know what the Nordic term for comics is other than just comics, but they seem to have a sensibility about them with their line and their storytelling ethos that really works for this. That I don't know that modern, mainstream, to put it the way Matt put it, because I think he's absolutely right, that mainstream modern American comics or even manga, I don't think that it works in the same way as far as a storytelling vehicle. And so there's something about that, other than a few other American, obviously there's a few other ones that can do it really well. But I think across the board, European artists are the hot shit right now for me specifically. So it's cool seeing this adapted by those folks. So, like I said, I have no idea what it is, but there's something about the sensibility that they use that just wins in a book like this that's atmospheric and so tethered to tapping into the reader's emotion. So, but enough about Conan. I want to hear about Craig. What you got? What's your number 4, brother?
Yeah, so the next book I'm going to talk about, maybe you haven't heard me talk about on the show. I don't remember if I have or not, but that's Beta Ray Bill. For Marvel Comics, Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer.
Mm-hmm.
This book is pretty much a spin of the Greek Catabasis trope. I think that's how you say that word, where the hero must travel to the underworld to gain an artifact or to bring someone back. And after the events of Thor, where Donald Blake essentially removed Beta Ray Bill's ability to transform back into his true self, Bill must now travel to quote unquote the underworld and fight a demon to gain access to a magical sword that will return his powers. Personally, I want to see DWJ draw Beta Ray Bill for the rest of forever and no one else be allowed to.
I don't disagree with that. I just finished this series last night, and
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's the story is fantastic, and the art, as you would expect from Johnson, is just absolutely amazing. I don't always love the way he draws intellectual properties, but I think he's perfect for Beta Ray Bill, especially in this setting.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was just going to second that. Yeah, it looked great. I especially appreciated the fight scenes. That all the fight scenes were over the top great, and I like the way he threw in some wrestling moves, like some vicious clotheslines.
Yep.
Just amazing.
The power bomb he did, and
dropped
the guy on the spike.
Hilarious. It's just hilarious.
Yeah,
great stuff.
It's a very, very well constructed story. Of course, he's taking it straight from Greek tragedy, but it works, and it works well. And then his art, just phenomenal, top notch.
1000%. So when it first got announced that he was doing this, I just finished, or when I first realized that he was doing this, I just wrapped up his Wonder Woman Dead Earth. And it is weird to me. It's always strange when Daniel Warren Johnson writes, especially now, he writes in continuity stuff, because when I think of DWJ, I think of just balls to the wall, bonkers, high energy, doesn't fit into anybody's brackets. He's going to do his own thing. Like he did with Wonder Woman Dead Earth. Like it's like he almost, his ideas are so just kinetic that it's almost hard to fit them into an in continuity story. And so I was wondering how this was going to play out, but oh my, like I love everything that he did. The only thing I don't love about this book that it's in standard format. And I think his art is so, it's got so much motion. It's so vibrant. It's so alive that it deserves and almost demands to be bigger, like at least magazine size at minimum. And there's just so much that
I think you just got spoiled with his stuff being in that format.
No, I did, but it's so much. His art is so good that it deserves that, and I hope that they come out with a larger format and a collected edition, like a hardcover for this, the way that they did a lot of his other stuff from other publishers, because it's just so fucking cool. And the way I did, so one of the side characters in this is the Executioner, and the Executioner's relationship with Bill, just that bromance that is there, is just I love it. Like I would love to see more of this, if it's even possible with the way the story wrapped up. But it was fun, and he's so tapped into Daniel Warren Johnson, so tapped into popular culture, and like if you follow him online, the dude's a huge fan of of wrestling, and he's a huge fan of metal, and he's just genuinely a positive force that it's ridiculous. And I should say, like, these issues, I want to say Felix Liu is his rep. These issues sell complete. Like somebody buys all of the art at once. So like your dreams of owning a page from this are just squashed, because he is such a force when it comes to the art world that he just sells entire issues. People just buy them at once. One person owns all the artwork to these, and it's insane. So
yeah, I mean, I love this book. You brought up Dead Earth, and there's one thing I wanted to say. That book has one of my favorite scenes ever out of a comic book. And that's when Wonder Woman rips Superman's spine out and uses it as a whip.
Yeah, yes. That book was so good. So good. Well, all right, Steve, we're to you, buddy. What's your number 4?
I'm just still thinking about that panel where she rips his head and spine out. I'm gonna beg everybody up there with the Daniel Warren Johnson love. Reading anything that he's written, and I have not read the Beta Ray Bill, but Dead Earth was essentially like reading a 4-part Dragon Force guitar solo.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just everything is in that, and it just looks like the whole thing is moving while you're reading it, which is wonderful. So anyway, going to my number 2, I think I'm going to go with an actual series, because again, I don't have these in any order. This doesn't say that it's better or worse, but we talked about James Tynion IV, or JT4, earlier, and late last year he came out with a great series called Department of Truth, and concerns an agent, Cole Turner, who's brought into sort of the backest of back rooms in secret government agencies, and experiences the fact that there's a department out there that manipulates reality by pruning untruths and conspiracies in some cases, and bolstering other conspiracies in other cases, just to kind of keep some sort of equilibrium. And it was a very interesting story, really, really cool intro to this world that JT4 is building. The artwork, which I believe is by Martin Simmons for the most part, at least in the first story arc, was just wild, just very strange. Lots of collage. There's a bit of David Mack kind of thrown into things, a little bit of maybe Dave McKean a little, with some other found object kind of sketched in. But this year saw an expansion of that entire concept. And there were a couple of guest artists. I know we had Tyler Boss did an interesting flashback issue. And we're really being brought into how insane the world of Department of Truth really is. We got some introduction of that last year, but this year we've got Lee Harvey Oswald is the head of the agency. Turns out, he never really did assassinate JFK. Everything that we know about the 60s is essentially a lie. Except for there was a moon landing, but the lie of the moon landing also exists concurrently. The Middle Ages sort of didn't exist. The Catholic Church apparently fast forwarded the calendar by about 300 years. So there's 300 years worth of time didn't actually happen, and we're really only in the 1700s. Just all sorts of things are thrown at you in such a fun, exciting way. It reminded me so much of reading the Time Life book series back in the 80s and early 90s that they would advertise incessantly on late night TV. The secrets and mysteries of the universe. And basically it just throws it all out to you and says, well, it's all real. And if it isn't real, if enough people believe it, then it becomes real. And so you follow Cole, you follow Lee Harvey Oswald, you have some really interesting stories and situations and explanations that are, partially out of James's brain and his great writerly brain, and then partially are out of the darkest, deepest corners of any internet conspiracy page and even pre-internet conspiracy files. It's just so much fun. And currently right now, the last couple of issues have been dealing with tulpas, which is an idea from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's just a creature made flesh, an idea, concept made flesh. And so Cole is learning from one of the agency's best tulpa hunters on how to hunt them down, and is currently on an expedition to find an actual Bigfoot that has been made real. But apparently not the first Bigfoot, and probably won't be the last Bigfoot. And Bigfoot, by the way, doesn't exist, but it does when somebody believes it exists. So such a crazy concept. Reading every issue is like, wrapping your head around a telephone pole metaphorically. It is so much fun. And the artwork really does aid in sort of the frenetic and bizarre and, crazy, concepts that you're reading about there in that book. And I think James is just having a lot of fun with it. And as a reader, I'm just having a ton of fun with it as well. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it when it first came out. In fact, I actually waited a couple months to start reading it, but I'm glad I got into it. And this year, it's just, I'm glad I stuck with it. So Department of Truth, the second and now I guess going into the third story arcs for 2021. Really a ton of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool.
It's not one I've read, so I can't really speak to it, but Tinian's absolutely an amazing writer, so I have no doubt that it's great.
Yep. I don't know. Is anybody else reading this, or am I the only?
I read the first issue, and I haven't. I need to go back and finish it because it's getting all the accolades. I mean, for all the reasons you just said. But no, I'm not on it either. I think you're right. Tynan, he has fun with the books he writes, and I think that comes through with everything. Even his Batman stories, which are not my favorite right now, but he's having fun, and that.
But we can't let that go. The Batman that's being written right now is the best Batman that's been being written in the last 5 years.
Second. I second that, not second best, I should say.
No, you were right the first time. No, I'm just kidding.
You're talking about that guy that got fired, right, Caleb?
Oh no, I actually think Mariko Tamaki is killing it right now on Detective.
She is.
So my book, number 4 on my list that I want to go into is from Marvel Comics, a little book few people are familiar with, The Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing. The pencils layouts by Joe Bennett. Just what else can be said about this, man, other than this is interesting how I feel about this book right now specifically because we're coming up on issue 49. Issue number 50 is going to be the final issue. And I've enjoyed this story so much. It has been so compelling. I'm actually looking forward to the end because I'm so looking forward to how Al Ewing and the rest of the creative team wraps all this up. Because like, this is the first book I can remember reading where every issue feels like a key issue. Like every issue feels important. Every issue ends with a Jesus Christ. What are they going to do? What's next? Like I cannot wait until the next one comes out.
Can they top themselves in the next issue?
Yeah, it's just been an incredible display of storytelling with a character that, you know, is one of my childhood favorites, but I lost a lot of interest in because of the way the directions the characters taken throughout the years. It just seemed to, frankly, just felt like the spirit of the character had been lost.
Yeah.
And this just felt like it brought everything back into place and expanded upon a lot of things that had been done, you know, arguably during the strongest storyline being Peter David's. So it's just been, I've just adored this book. It has just been absolutely phenomenal. It's the first book I recommend when people ask me about Marvel specifically. It's like, if you're not reading Immortal Hulk, you're just living wrong.
I can't argue with any of that.
I can't even.
Guess I'm just living wrong.
You're living wrong, Steve.
Yeah.
Living
You are
wrong.
living wrong,
Living
Steve.
wrong. Yeah.
Oh,
You're going to have to go get this. I hear that volume 4 is almost impossible to find, though. So.
oh, great. Well, because when Matt, when you mentioned Peter David's run, that was my childhood. That was the run of Incredible Hulk that defined my understanding of that character.
Oh yeah. I mean, and this builds upon that tremendously. I mean, he takes that specific foundation and just builds upon it in just an amazing fashion.
Nice.
Yeah,
I've heard you guys just gush about it for the past year, 2 years, and it's my fault for not jumping on it and reading it.
I can't even. I'm not even going to try to talk about it because I'll cry because I'm not ready for it to end yet. Like everything, even problematic artist issues included in that. Everything about this book, the depiction that he puts down, the Cronenbergian aspect of what he's laying out, it's just, it makes my heart happy. I'm gonna be sad to see it go, but like like Matt said, it's been so damn good that I just want to know what the end point is. So I'm tentatively excited, but no, I will cry. There will be teardrops on my issue 50. I'm not like, yeah.
I think that's probably all of
I
it.
too then. By 2, one to read and one to put in plastic. Safe from tears.
Well, my number 4 is a book that I know Craig also enjoyed. It comes from Boom Studios, and purely on my list because of the artwork. The story is excellent, but the story is secondary when it comes to what is the visual aspects of it. And that book is Luna by Marie Lovett. Like I said, it's produced by Boom. So the book is about this young girl who joins what's supposed to be a hippie commune in the 60s, or at least that's the way it looks like. And the hippie commune, turns out to be a cult, like some hippie communes become. But not only is this a cult, it's actually a cult for a secret blood god that they have been stealing the life force from to become something else. And Luna has to figure out what to do with it. It's psychedelic pop surrealism. You mix hippie culture and ancient blood gods, and you got a winning combination there. I think the book is like a lot of Maria Lovett stuff. It is intensely sexual. It's intensely sensual. I've never seen anybody accurately draw an orgasm on the page the way that she does, as far as just facial features in the way that people look. The book has some undertones. There's something that's being written there about addiction and about addiction treatment and how people approach addiction, I think. There's also a lot of self-discovery in this book, and at least for me, part of the thing, the lens in which I read the book, and I read a lot of Maria Lovett's work, is through a queer lens, and there are queer overtones, there are queer undertones. There is a pansexual element to the book and a positive sex positive element to the book. but it also taps into some of the issues that can come with that type of relationship and that type of life, and that she just wins. But at the end of the day, like I said, even the more fictionalized elements of dealing with an ancient blood god and the man beneath the mountain, so to speak, it explodes off the page with Maria's very, very appropriate watercolor pop art sensibilities, to the way that she just envelops like the look and the feel of 1969, of this kind of summer of love theme that she's working into her stuff. And it just, I adore this book.
If we had 10, if we were doing a top 10, this would have definitely hit in that list for me.
Nice.
It fell just outside the top 5. I agree everything you said. The thing I would also add is that to me, it's almost got a Romeo and Juliet, werewolf and vampire type love story.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true.
She's named Luna for a reason.
Yep.
And then you've got the blood god that's essentially a vampire. So, you've got that kind of forbidden love thing happening as well.
Mm-hmm. She's so damn good.
She is good.
So damn good. Well, Craig, we're back to you, brother. What's in the middle of your heap?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Proctor Valley Road by Boom Studios. Grant Morrison, Alex Child, Naomi Franquez, and Tamara Bonvillain. It's 70s in Chula Vista, California, which is the southern part of San Diego. 4 teenage girls who are trying to get money to see a concert decide to take a group of teenagers on a paid tour of the Proctor Valley Monster Road area. When the monster is actually real and attacks the kids, the girls are now left to prove the monster exists and stop it before they are charged with the death of the other kids, or worse yet, before the monster gets them. So I don't know if you remember, but a couple of weeks ago when I talked about this, I said I wonder if there, if this is based on any urban legends in California, seeing as how I grew up in San Diego. I did some research, and there actually is a urban legend of a Proctor Valley monster that they took this straight from. So one version is very similar to the version of the hook in the door handle story that we've all heard 1,000 times. But yeah, so it comes from a local urban legend. Being from San Diego, that fact just happens to drive this story even more home for me. But it is absolutely a fantastic horror story. Well told, well crafted, nicely drawn. No complaints at all.
Leave it to Grant Morrison to reach into a peat bog in Scotland and pull out a Southern California mythos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where their ideas come from, but it's insane. I'm not reading this, even though I should be, even though you've tapped into it.
It's only 5 issues long, so
Okay.
you'll be able to get it in a trade. It just wrapped up this week, so
Very cool.
been one of my favorites this year.
Nice. All right, Steve, we're back to you, brother. What is third? Unless anybody else has any wants to say anything about that.
Well, I'll say Proctor Valley Road. I've been really enjoying it too. It is weird that Grant Morrison can really capture the feel of what it is like to be a teenage girl in the early 70s in Southern California. So I would say it's his past life, but that would have been
Definitely
a past life.
Definitely.
Just jumping in real quick. So Grant Morrison actually came out last year as non-binary, and so that may play into some of it. And yeah, I think that you can read a lot of Grant's work, and there is a feminine sensibility there. So I think that really helps. I don't know about the Southern California and teenage aspect of it, but yeah, as somebody who identifies as non-binary in their work, I think there is an interesting ability to capture at least both sides of or all of the gender spectrum there, for somebody who has at least explored it internally. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
That very well may be the case here, because they do a really good job of highlighting sort of the ups and downs, and also the badassery of these individuals, which is great. So the book I'm going to go back to talk about, and this is a single issue as well. This again was a series that started, at the very end of 2021 and continued. 2020 and continued to 2021, and it is part of the Black Hammer universe, which Caleb, this is one of my favorites, favorite constellation of books, and Colonel Weir Cosmagog has just been one of the best series to come out of that. And it's, just these miniseries, each miniseries that comes out from Lemire just keeps hitting better and better and better, and just, really going back to a well of genius, in my opinion. But Colonel Weird Cosmagog was really probably his most philosophical book out of this series of Black Hammer Tales. And in issue number 4, it wraps up this story in a way that it almost seemed impossible to be wrapped up. Reading issues 1, 2, and 3, just the ideas that are being thrown around of Colonel Weird encountering himself at every, at multiple ages, at multiple periods of his life, in multiple parts of the universe, being sort of torn out of time and thrown into time with sense of what's going to happen in the future, what's happening in the past. Very Dr. Manhattan-esque kind of, way of looking at linear time. Doesn't really happen when you're Colonel Weird. And just the tragedies that happen around, what happens to his girlfriend Eve, and just getting stuck, lost in the Parazone, all of these things, just the fears of being alone and being abandoned in the universe because of who and what he is. Issue number 4 takes all of those strings of plot and ties them together in such an emotionally powerful way. You see each of his ages that we've been introduced to throughout the other issues, basically all saying essentially the same thing. Something's missing. Something is not here. I feel alone without whatever is not here. And you get to see all these moments that are really impactful and really important to Black Hammer history. The fight in New York against the anti-god, their escape from the fake universe or small town that they were, quote unquote, trapped in, his launching into space and exploring the Parazone for the first time. And then, of course, basically coming back at the end of time to rediscover himself. And all of it is tied together with the one character who has been completely missing from this series and has been almost forgotten, I think, based on how often they showed up or didn't show up in the other tales, in the other books. And that is Talkie-Walkie. And just the fact that everything comes down to this one robot that has been his constant companion since he was first in space. And just that meaning, the meaning of having this companion that has never left his side, and how important that is to him, and grounding him in a way that nothing can ground this guy, just brought tears to my eyes. And them, at the end of the book, to spoil the whole thing, but you have to read it, of them just blasting off to the future, it's just, it's a perfect end to this short 4-issue series. And actually ends up being one of the best written issues in all of the Black Hammer books that have come out since Jeff Lemire started putting these out. Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago now. It hasn't been that long. But yeah, Colonel Weird Cosmagog number 4. And Tyler Crook. Tyler Crook's art in this, just emotionally resonant. Just perfect for how quiet and yet then crazy it can be. Just oof. Tears in my eyes.
Yeah, I've got my eye on a page from that book actually right now, and someday it will be mine.
Someday it will be mine. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not one that I read. I kind of dropped off of Black Hammer, but I've heard nothing but good about that one, as well as the Barbalian one.
Yeah, Barbalian was a really great series too. Definitely an honorable mention for me for this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there hasn't been much that's came out of that universe that I haven't really enjoyed. Just stunning stuff, and that, like, yeah, Steve is 1000% right about this book. Just it will. Oh, it's just so good. Matt, my brother from another mother, what's in the middle of your pile?
Middle of my pile is from DC, The Batman's Grave by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch. This was an absolutely fantastic 12-issue story arc. It felt very grounded Batman, very detective Batman. A lot of detective work in this story. A lot of old-fashioned hand-to-hand combat, illustrated outstandingly by Brian Hitch. The relationship between Bruce and Alfred was just a complete joy to read. You know, this is obviously outside current storyline before the desperate and pathetic attempt to increase interest in the Batman comic book by killing Alfred was done. So you don't have to suffer through that asinine choice that was made. This happens completely out of context. So this is one of the best Batman stories I've read in years and years. I mean, even before the New 52 happened, going way back to, say, The Long Halloween, I'll even say. This is just one of the best standalone Batman stories I've read in recent memory. I cannot recommend this story enough. And I was the only one reading it in our social circle for a long time. Nobody else was reading this. And I finally convinced Craig to jump in on it.
Yeah.
And I think Craig will back me up on everything I've just said.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And I had forgotten that this came out this year, would be in my list. So
I keep
absolutely
waiting.
Great.
I keep waiting on the collected edition. I haven't seen it come out, or I haven't seen it in previews. I don't know where it's at, because I definitely want it. Like, I'm sitting here looking at my my omnibus of the Authority, and you get Ellis and Hitch together. I mean, they have such a great back and forth as far as a writer artist duo, and what they put down on the page is just, it's excellent, especially in superhero comics. So yeah, I'm waiting on this one. I need it to come out in collected edition so I can read it, because it's just great stuff. And also, why haven't they brought Alfred back yet? Like, that's what I keep waiting on. Anyway, that's a different story for another time. In the midst of my stack is also a DC book. So Matt and I are kind of simpatico with that, but it's a new series ongoing right now. I think 5 issues of it have came out. And it's The Swamp Thing by Ram V, Mike Perkins, and Mike Spicer. So there are 1,000. I could wax poetic about this series all day long. I think it's one of the best things coming out of DC right now, because it's so different, but kind of like Immortal Hulk, it ties into and homages and glorifies some of the work that came before it, specifically the Alan Moore Swamp Thing stuff, but it does it while changing the mythos a little bit, in a way that at first stood out and I thought this was weird, but has since then explained itself. So in this story, there is a man named Levi Kamei, who is he's an Indian man from the subcontinent of India, and somehow he all of a sudden is tethered to the green, and in a very Hulk-like way transforms into Swamp Thing, which is very it's that's not what happened, or at least what happens in the story as Alan Moore reformed it. I think it has more of a connection to the Len Wein stuff before Alan Moore changed it, but it loops in as far as why it's that way, and how it's connected to the green, and how Levi became this figure, and how he became the totem of what is like a god. What the man thing, he is a god, and how he almost became possessed by this force, which is very interesting. The book plays into some old characters that we've seen before, who very famous in Swamp Thing lore. you get almost his big bads, but his big bads now share a relationship with him. You see the Pale Wanderer in one issue that comes out, and it's all gorgeously put on the page by Mike Perkins and Mike Spicer doing those colors. It has an ethereal feel throughout the whole book. You see it play into current continuity when he goes into the green, and when he goes in there, Poison Ivy is there, but it's not Poison Ivy, the quote unquote villain from like the Batman-esque aspect of it. It's almost a manifestation of the green that is, if Swamp Thing is the king of the green, Poison Ivy is a manifestation of what would be a queen or a matriarch of the green. And it almost takes on a life of itself as she's trying to root out what's wrong. The way that Perkins and Spicer draw Woodrue as he comes back is incredible. And this is all predicated by that Future State 3-issue run that shows you like years and years and years and years into the future, as far as a world that's been left behind and nature has reclaimed the earth, and they are looking for Swamp Thing. And I think this is leading up to that. It's one of the few Future State books that I think it's unfair to say that I enjoyed, because I enjoyed a few of them, but I actually cared about. So it was interesting to see what he's doing with this. And Ram V as a writer has blown up. I should say, if there's any writer that's having the quote unquote comeuppance, it's probably between him and Stephanie Phillips right now, as far as new writers go. So if you're not reading Swamp Thing, I highly recommend it. Easily in my top 5 of the books I'm enjoying right now. And you can get on the ground floor. It's not hard to find these issues. It's not like Immortal Hulk where you have to figure out how to get your hands on 48 issues, or even some of the other books that have been ongoing that may be hard to track down, except for Comixology. So right now it's a great new series to start. So go check it out. I don't know if anybody else but me is enjoying this book.
I haven't read it, so
I've got a pile of every issue somewhere behind me in the piles that you've seen. If you've seen the video for Comic Book Bears, yeah, it's in there. I'll read them eventually.
Nice. We'll do so and get back to me. Tell me what you think. Craig, we're at the penultimate here. Drop your number 4 on us.
Yeah, Daredevil by Marvel, Chip Zdarsky, Marco Cicchetto, Mike Hawthorne, Adriano Dena Benedito. When Daredevil lands himself in prison for manslaughter, he enables the help of a couple of people to help him maintain both the safety of Hell's Kitchen and to keep his identity a secret. Elektra takes over as Daredevil, but can she keep from killing and do the things to honor Daredevil's tradition, or will she revert to her own ways? Mike Murdock, Matt's twin brother, who has always been on the wrong side of the law, becomes Matt to help protect his brother. The only question here is how long before Mike completely destroys Matt's reputation and cost him everything. Chip Zdarsky continues to write the most compelling Daredevil story since Frank Miller. And especially when Cicchetto was on this, it was absolutely beautiful, but it hasn't lost much with Hawthorne on there. Both are fantastic artists. Both are doing great. Just an absolute wonderful book. I've been talking about this book since it launched. There was one little hiccup in it that I didn't like, but other than that, it's been fantastic all along. Go pick up this book.
Yeah, I second that. Excellent series. And I'm not historically a Daredevil fan. I mean, I'm typically not picking up Daredevil books. In fact, a lot of times I don't even pay attention, but this one's been great. Really good.
And I mean, they haven't even had a whole lot of Kingpin in it lately, which was really a big selling point in the early issues, is what they were doing with Kingpin.
Yeah.
He's kind of been in the background as of late, and it still is just super compelling.
Yeah.
I think as far as the big 2 goes, that's the mark of success when it comes to a book. If you can get people who aren't traditionally fans of the of the subject matter or of the character to latch on. And I've heard other people say the same thing. Like, dude, I haven't read, the Daredevil book in, ages, but this one grabbed me. So that's certainly a mark of quality when you start getting those fans who aren't fans to jump on and read it. So you guys have just said nothing but beautiful things about this book, and I've seen some of the pages that Mike Hawthorne has drawn, and he's putting them out on his social media pages. He just actually, I think, drew the last one the other day, and he was commenting on it, and just stunning line work from Mike Hawthorne, which it's Mike Hawthorne. So,
yep, both of them have been great on this book.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with either of those two artists. So,
no, sir. Well, Steve, jumping over to you, buddy.
Well, this is hard because I have several series that have just been knocking me upside the head this entire year. And I just want to honorably mention all of them before I go and talk about this other one. So Abbott, 1973, by Saladin Ahmed and Somi Kivela. I mean, it's just a beautiful book series. So far, 5 issues for this particular series. It's a follow-up to one of the earlier ones. Excellent book if you like sort of period piece supernatural. Also Destiny New York by Pat Shand, Manuel Pretano, Jim Campbell, Shannon Lee, a bunch of other people. That one is an excellent what happens after you fulfilled your destiny as the only person who can defeat whatever evil as a chosen one. What comes next? That's a great book series. Kind of interesting because it was actually written and published a couple of years ago, but Black Mask is actually bringing it now as a monthly series instead of the collected Kickstarter books that it was released in. But I actually do have to go back to Black Hammer again, and I kind of don't want to double up on this, but Black Hammer Visions has just been absolutely excellent. And the great thing about Black Hammer Visions is that each issue is completely self-contained. It's more of an anthology series taking place in the Black Hammer universe. And the great thing about it is that every issue is written by a wonderful guest writer and also drawn by multiple guest artists, some of whom have also drawn other Black Hammer issues before. But Visions is just great. It takes usually one character that we've already been introduced to throughout the series and highlights them in that issue. The first issue, of course, being written by Patton Oswalt in a wonderful pastiche of Ghost World, the great comic Ghost World, also involving Golden Gale and the rest of the Black Hammer team. But we also had wonderful issues that dealt with Cthulhu, one of our favorite, completely lazy villains. That's not really a villain, doesn't really care to do his villainy. We've got another one with the entire team as well, written by Mariko Tamaki, where they're jumping through different realities, different TV episodes. We've also got one written by Kelly Thompson with Skulldigger and a Black Cat-esque character that gives him a little bit of a frustration, but also serves for a very interesting, powerful, and emotional motivation for later on. So, it's such a great series. I just can't say enough wonderful things about it. The teams of the artists and the writers for this that they've picked for each of these issues has been, they've all been winners. So, Black Hammer Visions, I have to say, a couple of years ago, I think a lot of people were saying that Dark Horse was going to be going the way of the dodo after losing pretty much all of their major licenses.
Yep.
You're losing Star Wars to Disney, losing Alien and Predator to Disney, all the Fox things, Conan to Marvel, also to Disney. There wasn't a lot left that they had other than Hellboy and maybe a couple other, video game type series and a couple other series as well. Black Hammer, I'd have to say, if it didn't save the company, it definitely did help. And I can't wait to see what comes out of this going forward.
You said everything I would say, brother. I absolutely loved it. Also, Matt, will you please note for the record that I was not the first one to break the rules on today's episode?
Already done.
I just want the record to, because usually it's going to be me. I want the record to reflect. Matt, what is your number 4, brother?
Next book on my list, and again, I wanted to reiterate, these are not listed by strength of interest. These are just my overall top 5.
Right.
So the next book I want to mention is brand new, Vault Comics titled Barbaric from Michael Morrissey and Nathan Gooden. I freaking love this book.
Preach,
it is
preach.
great.
Yep.
The character. So I mean, we're 2 issues in, and the character development I freaking love. I love the storyline. You know, it is and it's worth noting. I typically, and I'm a sucker for barbarian storylines, but I like barbarian storylines that are low fantasy, and this feels a little bit more like high fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I have this much interest in what feels like a high fantasy barbarian story is kind of unusual. But I love this main character, Owen the Barbarian. His name alone is awesome. Owen the Barbarian. It's like, thank you for having the guts to name your character Owen the Barbarian. So it's just, so far, it's just got an amazingly creative feel. I love the character of Owen the Barbarian himself and his outlook on life. Of course, he's being forced to do good deeds, because he's been a spell has been cast upon him by a group of 3 witches, and his axe has been made sentient and basically serves as his conscience, almost kind of like a Jiminy Cricket sort of thing. You know, okay, something bad is happening, Owen, you got to interject, and he begrudgingly does so. As he kills people, the sentient axe also gets drunk on the blood, that's great touch, amazing touch. And it's got a very, the relationship between him and the axe is a very Calvin and Hobbes feel, because nobody else, just to be noted, nobody else can see or hear the axe as it speaks. So it looks like he's talking to his axe when he's hanging out at the local pub. So people think he's crazy for good reason. Except we just recently found out that another witch he has come across, that he was actually forced to help, she can see and hear the axe. So it gives you the impression, if you're within the magical realm, if you practice the magical arts, then you may or may not be able to also hear and see the axe's sentience. So I can't recommend this book enough. It's just a great fantasy specifically a barbarian fantasy story. Not overly complicated. Barbarian stories shouldn't be. That's not what they're about. It's just a very simple storyline, a very simple character being forced to do unselfish things, and he's not a fan. And it's amazing. Love every bit of it.
Oh, and to be clear, just because his axe is actually talking back to him doesn't mean he is not insane.
Yeah. It's not been established that he's not insane, but it certainly gives the impression, you certainly get the impression that he's, sane in all abilities, but regardless.
Yeah. My favorite part thus far in the story is not when the axe is telling him he has to go do, intervene to go do good things. It's when he's arguing with the axe and trying to convince the axe that somebody who has wronged him is actually evil. And the axe is just like, no, Owen, no, you can't, just because your feelings are hurt, you can't, doesn't mean it's amazing.
You can't kill people for being a jerk,
right?
All of a sudden he can't kill someone for being rude, so it's great. It's just a great display of character expansion.
Finding creative ways to convince somebody that the baby lawyer in me is just impressed. And I kind of take a side sometimes. I'm like, no, he makes a valid point. It's such a good series. And I think we're 2 issues in?
2 issues in. Yeah. And this is one now I anticipate. This is one of my most anticipated books that are being released right now.
Yeah, no, again, ground floor, you can get in on it right now. And it's like I could very easily see this series being in my top 10. For me, I purposely chose books that have at least have a good jump start on it, but this is on my short list.
It really
sorry, Greg.
No, I just said it really is good.
Needs it. Steve, put this on your things to do if you haven't read it yet.
I've just actually written it down.
Nice. And shout out to Vault Comics. Like last year, Vault was my favorite publisher. And they just keep winning, doing great stuff. But a lesser known publisher is printing out my number 4. It's a little known publisher. You guys might have heard of them. They're called Image. They have a series right now that on paper I probably shouldn't like, because there are, there are many things I'm scared of, but there are very few things that like actually functionally terrify me. One of those things is clowns. I hate them. I don't understand why they exist. They shouldn't, in my opinion. They're terrifying, and nobody who paints a smile on is a happy person. And the series explores that very concept, and it's called Ha Ha. And it's written by Matthew W. Maxwell Prince, and each issue is drawn by a different artist, which I think is like I said, it's an anthology, kind of like Steve's the book that Steve just spoke about is. But in this case, it's all written by W. Maxwell Prince, and each issue has a different thing. Well, issue 4, as far as single issues go, has been one of my favorites, and I don't know why I like this book so much. Maybe because they lay out psychologically what I think probably is in the minds of clowns. And again, it's a terrifying, horrible place. And so, but issue 4 is actually called Gustav in the World of Floating Objects. And I like this especially because not only does it play with psychology, it also plays with pop culture. And, the most famous evil clown book, movie, whatever, being It. It plays with the idea that everything floats down here. And just the pitch on it is, a wise clown once said that everything floats, and he was right. This is the comic book with literally laughable moments, but that dig into just some of the most heart-wrenching secrets that lives in the minds of people who might be clowns. The book ties into the movie The Joker in a little bit, which I wasn't, not necessarily a movie I care for, but I think this hit the right points on it. And it deals with some really, really dark subject matter. And all of the books, I should say, do. Like, all of them tap into different dark themes, but this one especially deals with, somebody who is just tapping out, who is both insane and done with the world, and has, is past the point of return. So the watercolors by Patrick Horvath in this book, you guys know me, I'm a sucker for watercolors. It's some of my favorite comics are watercolor books. Tyler Crook, being the pinnacle of watercolorists who are currently working, in my opinion, right now. But I mean, you've got some other amazing stuff. Obviously Ascender and Descender being some of the best watercolor books on the shelf right now. It speaks to me. And so when you take a book like this that is both visually stunning, that is intellectually just strong, like the book, W. Maxwell Prince is just a smart writer, and that's about something that I shouldn't like, or I shouldn't want to read, I shouldn't care about, and it keeps drawing me back in. It's such a great series, and I forget what issue we're up to right now. I think they're doing 12, but I've loved everything that W. Maxwell Prince has written. Even his Ice Cream Man series that he did. That I haven't read all of it. What I have read is just is wonderful. So go check out Ha Ha. It's a strong book, and even if you're like Craig and you don't necessarily care for anthologies, I think that there is enough in these issues that will draw you in.
Well, I mean, it's an anthology series, which is a little bit different than
Right.
an anthology issue in the middle of a run.
Right. Very,
So
very, very true.
that makes a difference for me.
Are you reading this, Craig? I remember we talked about it.
No, I read the first issue and I wasn't signed up for it, and I was going to pick them up and just forgot. So I have not read the other subsequent issues.
Check it out when it comes out in trade. I mean, you and everybody else listening to this, like, it's just, it's the book will, like, there's been moments in this where the series gave me goosebumps, literal goosebumps, because of just tones that they struck. It's great writing and beautifully delivered. So all in all,
Nice.
I should have pulled up some of the other artists who have done issues of this. But they're just incredibly strong. Like each is, you can't say that one is better than the last. I mean, there's like Vanessa Del Rey did an issue. Obviously, Patrick Horvath, who I just spoke about. Roger Landridge did a very cartoony-esque type issue. Issue 6 was Martin Morazzo. Like there's a lot of people that you may not have heard of that are just incredibly strong. And just the production value of the whole thing is amazing. It's like I couldn't believe that they actually like looped me in. So it's solidly in my top 5.
Nice.
Now we're at the moment, guys. This is the hard part. Now we have to. I don't know if y'all are like me, but I actually had more than 5 written down just in case because I couldn't make my decision. So now I've got to whittle those down, and I've got room for one more. So I'm glad I'm not going first. So Craig, what is the last book that you would recommend for the halftime?
Well, my last book was actually Immortal Hulk, but because of it's already been discussed, I'm going to throw out one that I had on my list just in case.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Bunny Mask by Aftershock Comics. Paul Tobin, Andrea Muti, and Taylor Esposito. An ancient being is set free by an unwitting serial killer. Why does she wear a bunny mask? Why does she take on the persona of the serial killer's daughter later, 14 years later? Why do paintings and statues of her keep showing up in random places? We don't know why, because it's only 2 issues in. It's absolutely beautifully drawn. I'm enjoying it so far. It's really not far enough in to say whether it'll be in my top 5 or 10 at the end of the year, but so far, first 2 issues absolutely captivating. If nothing else, for Muti's artwork on it.
Right. Yeah, I read that first issue and it creepy and fun.
Yeah, and it gets creepier in the second issue. So
shit. Steve, final book, brother. Do it to it. Pick one of mine so I don't feel guilty about passing over it.
Oh, jeez. Well, I don't know. Maybe you'll have picked this one. I don't know. So this is unlike a floppy. It's not a series. It was a single one and done graphic novel. Kind of stretches the meaning of the word comics a little bit, but it is it is a graphic novel. Really impacted me the first time I read it, so I immediately put it down, picked it back up, and read it a second time right away. I Never Promised You a Rose Garden by Fantagraphics Books, written and drawn by Manny Murphy. I can't say enough good things about this book. It is a very personal essay about the history of Manny Murphy's obsession with River Phoenix and River Phoenix's death, as well as growing up in Portland, Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, and ties it all together to white supremacy, to a history of violence, racial violence in the city and in the area. It really, also pulls into the heated sort of reality TV talk show era of the late 80s, early 90s. And then, of course, the kind of drug-fueled, queer-fueled existence of River Phoenix and Gus Van Sant's movies in the early 90s as well. I mean, this book has everything. It goes from A to Z at 100 miles per hour, and you're not really sure exactly what the direction is going to be by the time you pull that last page. But after you do, going back to the beginning and seeing where it started is definitely a really rewarding activities. So I definitely recommend I Never Promised You a Rose Garden as one of my favorite books, if not the favorite book that I've read in the first half of this year. Yeah.
Cosign. I will absolutely co-sign that. And you were successful. That was on my list of things to talk about. I don't normally like stream of conscious books, be it prose, comics, whatever. That's not necessarily my favorite form of storytelling, which a lot of people love it, and it's very avant-garde and it's experimental writing, as it were. And so I respect it. It's just not something that I enjoy reading, but this absolutely floored me. Just everything from the images and the gray wash artwork that was on there, to the way that the book was formatted, where you had, words on the bottom part of the page, and the top was all the images. Like you said, it does stretch the line of, is this a comic? Because but I think it is. It's that thing. Can you have a single panel depicting a picture and it be a comic? And it's one of those things that books like Understanding Comics waffles with and doesn't really find a definitive answer to. But I think for me, it's solidly yes, it can be. And I think this is a great example of how. Yeah, it's just like, I didn't know what I was getting into, because you recommended this book to me, and I if it's not up for an Eisner or for copious awards next year, then wrongs have been committed, because it certainly deserves.
Absolutely.
For our friend Bill to come out, who's not a big, I don't think is necessarily, this type of book is not like on his things that he goes out of his way to read. And, I've heard him say that this might be his second favorite graphic novel ever. Like,
wow. Yeah.
Is the way that he put it. And it's just so good. So good.
And, weird, very coincidental TV tie-in. Dark Side of the 90s, which is a new series on Viceland. The first 2 episodes deal with 90s talk shows and the rise of reality TV, including referencing this the Geraldo episode.
Yeah,
that's referenced in the book. And episode number 2 is about the Viper Room, where River Phoenix unfortunately had his overdose and died, and features a lot of River Phoenix in that Viper Room episode. And I'm like, it's like, read this for the meat and potatoes, and then watch the salacious details on Dark Side of the 90s. It's just a very interesting timepiece that gives you a lot of history and a lot of emotional history of that era, as well as the author. I mean, they're like, the art's kind of hard to describe. It's like inks and watercolors, a wash to soften all the edges and blur the lines and the shading. But yeah, I mean, Manny Murphy did an amazing job on this.
Perfectly imperfect, just wonderful. And I feel like I haven't seen the Dark Side of the 90s yet, but I've heard you speak about it. I feel like Matt would love that show.
Yeah. I gotta check that out.
I mean, if you've seen Dark Side of Wrestling and Dark Side of Football, it's the same production company. Really great stuff being put out by Viceland.
Yeah, I feel like Matt loved what you were telling me about Dark Side of the Ring, weren't you, buddy?
Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring. That's what it was. Dark Side of the
Incredible. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I feel like you're about to tell us something else that's incredible too. What's your final recommendation?
And dark. Ooh. Also from Fantagraphics, Red Room by Ed Piskor.
I was wondering if this was going to be on your list. I was surprised that it wasn't yet.
So the reason this book, I think this is one of the best books, the ones that I look forward to the most. First of all, this is a total subversive book. This feels like what comics used to be, very subversive, not trying to win awards, not trying to get up their own ass with their clever storylines. It's black and white and gray and zipatone art. This has got a very punk rock feel to it. This has got a very 2000 AD, as in the UK publication, the very 2000 AD feel to it. It's just completely unpretentious. It's very violent. It's not trying to be mainstream. It's just trying to be brutally honest. This feels like a brutally honest book that doesn't censure itself to attract as many readers as possible. It's like listening to a Dead Kennedys album. It's just expressing itself and delivering exactly the way it wants to deliver. I love this book, and I love what Ed Piskor is doing with this. The whole feel and look to the book is just very raw. The art's great. I mean, he really takes a lot of time on how he's drawing each panel and the effect that it has, but it just has a very unpretentious feel to it. And the story's horrific, but completely believable, frankly. If you have any knowledge of the dark web and you know what the dark web is and what has happened on the dark web, this feels like this could happen at any time, or it has already. What's going on, the story is just that on the dark web, there are people that commit murders live and there are subscribers to watch it. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's gruesome as all get out, but feels like it very much could happen. So if you're looking for something that's unsettling, something that, you know, is going to make you wince, this is the story for you. I am not a gore fan. I'm not so much a horror movie fan. You know, anything that's, you know, if someone tries to get me to watch a horror movie that's just because it's, you know, it's gore, I'm not going to watch it. I don't like that stuff. But in the context of this book, it's refreshing. It's just a refreshing setting in what feels like is a lot of pretentious material that's out in the world today. And it feels like there's so many books that come out that feel like they're trying to apologize for what a comic book is. Like, look how smart we can be. See how smart we are. See how smart comic books can be. It just feels like way too many people are up their own ass to elevate the genre. So something like this that doesn't do any of that, doesn't worry about any of that, not looking to elevate anything, be mainstream, but still be really good. Again, it's got a very punk rock feel to it, where you're just doing it for the expression and the art form itself, not because you are trying to be a commercial success or impress people.
Which is funny because it in fact is a commercial success.
Yeah.
It's impressing people. So it succeeded in it doing what it, you know,
Well,
what it set out to do, but because of that, I think it was a success.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's not that it didn't want to be a commercial success. He's just not changing he's not so it's like comparing, let's say it's like comparing Motorhead to Kid Rock.
Oh, don't
Kid Rock, Kid Rock does what he does to sell records. He waters down material and makes it as stupid as possible so he can sell as many records as possible. Motorhead did what Motorhead does. And if you buy the record, great. You know, if you don't, they're still going to do what they do.
Right. Oh, never make that comparison again.
I mean, it's a perfect comparison.
That made me more uncomfortable than reading Red Room.
Yeah.
Also, when you said Zipatone, I got tingly in my special places. Because that's the kind of art. No, so I read the first issue of this book, and everything you're saying is correct, and like that the uncomfortability that this book put in me, like I was viscerally uncomfortable reading this book, is exactly why I didn't get on, because, you know, some books aren't for other people. But like I was reading this book and I'm like, oh God, like what weird search history is on Ed Piskor's computer, and is somebody like I'm putting him on a watch list, because he takes it to a incredibly weird, but like you're reading this and you're like, God dang, like this is actually happening. Like this is happening somewhere. Maybe not to this extent or this way, but there are absolutely places on the dark web where people are using Bitcoin to watch sadistic, heinous acts perpetrated on people who don't want to be there. And I'm just like, oh, like, so that's why I jumped off of it. But, you know, I've been a fan of Ed Piskor's other works, and he's like a dog with a bone when it comes to, you know, if he's writing a book about hip hop, he goes all in. If he's writing a book about the X-Men, he goes all in and finds a way to weave through it and make it work, and you know, to tell that story. This is more akin to a book like WYSIWYG, I think, for him, because it does feel like he's not playing in somebody else's sandbox in the same way that he was when he was, you know, writing Hip Hop Family Tree, where he was more writing a timeline of the invention and the important people in that, or when he was taking, you know, the very expansive and robust world of the X-Men, and like distilling it down into a bare essence to where it give you just like a 30,000 foot view of what Claremont did in his years and years and years of work into a little timeline. This feels more akin to like the first thing I read from him. But it's, you can go back and you look at those and you see how he's elevated his art. You see how he's he's really tapping into the XYZ feel of comics, and that's what he wants to deliver, that head shop feel. He's on top of his game, whether or not you like his work or not. I think he's a very important cartoonist in the zeitgeist that has to be noticed. Just incredible work, and just fucking uncomfortable. But my book is not an uncomfortable book. My last on the issue, and I just want to say, on my list I also had Immortal Hulk. So thank you guys for covering that. I'm not going to talk about it, but since Steve broke the rules, I'm going to too. The not just the main series, but the one shots that have tied into the Immortal Hulk series have been great. Specifically, the Flatline story that was written by Declan Shalvey. So if you've passed up those one shots, I think Jeff Lemire did one as well. Go find those, because they are wonderful, and really do a lot to just, they don't necessarily, if you don't read them, you're not missing anything out of the story, but they do a lot to just elevate what's happening with the entire mood of what Al Ewing is and Joe Bennett have laid down. Also had Beta Ray Bill on mine, so Craig got that one and just won with it. But on my list, the one that hasn't been mentioned and is in my top 5 is a series that it's only had 2 issues so far. So I'm kind of breaking my own rule with where I went to look into these things. But it comes from Dark Horse Comics, and it's Orphan and the Five Beasts by James Stokoe. I'm a huge James Stokoe fan. I love the kinetic energy that he laces into his pages. I love the layering. I love the detail, the texture that he puts down on the page. Alien Dead Orbit is a perfect example of some of just what he can bring. But this is a story that he, this is his own world. And it's kind of a kung fu epic, which is cool because we don't get a lot of, outside of Bronze Age stuff. Kung fu is something that's been a little bit left behind, but I think it's starting to make a resurgence. I think you're starting to see more and more of that, people understanding what made it so fun in the Bronze Age, and they're bringing it back. And certainly Stokoe is doing that with his blend of anime meets Shaolin cowboy type of artistry. And in this book, you have this character named Orphan Mo, who was raised in a monastery. Is a little bit of a start at the bottom, now we're here kind of character, who an evil has resurged into the world. Orphan Mo's master was played part and parcel of breaking this evil and stopping the Five Beasts from entering the world. And now the spirit who was shattered in the history of the story has reemerged, and it's taken. It's put itself in 5 different regions, each being, it's kind of the 7 deadly sins trope, but with only 5. And in the first book, you just you meet one of the people that has been infested with this one of the beasts, and it's this just larger than life badass with thighs so big that he squeezes horses and makes them explode. So it's a little bit kung fu, it's a little bit ridiculous, it's a coming of age tale, it's a hero's journey tale, and delivered in the way that I think Stokoe can bring. It's it's like a grindhouse comic. If Lone Wolf and Cub got the grindhouse treatment, this might be, James Stokoe might be what comes out with this story. So like I said, 2 issues in, I think the 3rd one comes out next week, maybe, or it should be coming out soon. Orphan and the Five Beasts. It is one of the most fun comics I've read this year. Just a joy to read. You laugh out loud. I can't sing its praises enough. So If you've missed out on this one, go back and because it's only win. All it does is win. It's solidly going to be, if this is not in my top 10 list at the end of the year, then it just ran off a cliff somewhere, or it didn't finish, because it's everything about it is ridiculous and beautiful. So go check it out if you haven't. I think we read the first issue of this on the show. I'm not sure. Way back when.
I think so. I think I do. Yeah. I mean, you did talk about that before. And unfortunately, I have not been able to find it.
Say what?
Yep. No first issue. I was able to get the second issue. I missed both the first printing and I guess there's a second printing. Nope.
Well,
none of the 3 stores I've gone to have had it, other than the second issue. So I've got my second issue that I'm refusing to read until I read the first one.
Well, I'll check at our LCS and see if they have one, and I'll send it to you if they do. Because it needs to be read.
That would be wonderful. So now I can finally read my second issue and then pick up the third issue when it comes out.
Craig,
kind of like how I was with Haha.
Right.
I had issues 2 and 3, but I hadn't found issue 1 until they reprinted it. So
nice. Craig, I think I remember you liking the book. Did you stay on it?
No, I didn't stay on it.
Oh, sadness.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart. Well, guys, that's a lot of book. That's a lot of book that we just ran through. And coming out of a pandemic, or it not even coming out of it, just in the midst of a pandemic, I think a lot of us were a little concerned with what comics were going to look like this year, especially after, the shutdown last year, the pencils down aspect of corporate comics. We really didn't know where it was going to go, but obviously, as you can tell just from the list of things that we've mentioned on this show, those 20 books, the comics are in great shape, and there are some amazing, excellent stories that are being told from be it major Disney corporate owned Marvel and DC comics to books like Dark Horse or Fantagraphics and independent indie artists that are doing things. So comics are in really good shape. Like there is a overabundance of good things. It's almost an embarrassment of riches when it comes to where comics are at right now. I have more trouble pulling stuff off my list because just because I don't have the money to read everything. So
yeah, I think we all get to that point on occasion.
Yeah. Is there? Did y'all have any honorable mentions? I listed a few. I know Steve listed a few. Craig or Matt, were there any books that almost made the list?
I used mine up. So
okay.
I had a lot that I had to, weed down to 5.
Right. Yeah, there's just some really great stuff coming out. And speaking of great stuff coming out, every once in a while you get to see our guest, our friend who has joined us here, on a little. It started off as a podcast, and it still is a podcast, but now it's a video cast, and it's called The Comic Book Bears. And so, Steve, talk just a little bit about that and what's going on with Comic Book Bears, and where else the listeners, should they enjoy the sultriness of your voice, come find you.
Well, thank you, Caleb. So Comic Book Bears for many, many years was audio only, but last year with the pandemic, where we had the great idea of seeing each other's faces for the first time. Well, not for the first time. We've hung out before, but seeing each other's faces while podcasting, and then also doing live broadcasts. So you can see us not every week. We'll take a week or so off every month, but pretty much weekly on Thursdays. We have our live stream on Facebook Live, as well as on our YouTube channel and on Twitch, of all things, if you're into Twitch. But myself, Bill Zanowitz, Brian Pittard, and sometimes Caleb Alexander McKenzie, when we can steal them away from from law school and life, will join us for talking about comics. And if you'd like to check us out. We do have our Facebook page, Comic Book Bears Podcast, and then a Gmail page for our Gmail email, comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm on Facebook as well as Stephen Morey. I'm the one in North Carolina, not all the other ones, because there are apparently a lot of us. One guy who's a cattle rancher out in Texas or something like that, and another one who's a Bellator MMA fighter, who is definitely the kind who could probably beat me up, rip my head off, and then I don't know, maybe he likes comics too, so then he could take my place. But it's Stephen Morey on Facebook, or one of many Steves on Twitter.
Is there
I don't post too much on there.
Secret legion of Steves that we didn't know about?
There must be. There really is. There's also a sound engineer Steve. There's rodeo clown Steve. There's a lot of Steve Moreys out there. For some bizarre reason, it's a very popular name that they'd never heard until Facebook came along. So
there's a Craig Lance minister that uses clowns and magic to do his ministry work.
Wow.
That's an issue of haha that needs to be written. Wow. I don't know if there's any other Caleb Alexanders. I'm sure there is. None of them I haven't noticed them. But there's only one Matt Trogdon. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He stands alone among men.
Unfortunately, I have nowhere to hide.
No, but I will co-sign that. I've been listening to CBB for years, and I pick up a lot of recommendations, and they have wonderful, intelligent, smart insights into the books that they read. Even, Patting, they allow me to come on the show every once in a while, but it's special because of them and the insights that they have. And as Bill always says on that show, it's it's the comic book show done by hairy, heavy homos, but you don't have to be hairy, heavy, or a homo to enjoy the show. There's lots of it for everybody. Now, the way we end each show is we try to give a recommendation of a book that's coming out next week. And so I'll start first, but there is a book from Scout Comics coming out this next week called We Don't Kill Spiders. Craig turned my attention over onto Scout Comics this past year. So thank you for doing that. But We Kill Spiders is a book by Joseph Schmalke and John Gallagher, did the variant cover art. It's from the Black Caravan imprint. In the early Viking age, a faithless Norseman detective is summoned to a Scandinavian hamlet where a series of murders has occurred. Discovering the dark and bloody history of the village, he investigates the local outcast, a necromantic witch who brings his aesthetic values into question. Determined to prevent further homicide, like a good person, the two band together and discover the identity of a serial killer. Just based on the cover alone, I will own this. I needs it and I wants it. So go pick it up if you can get it.
I'll go next because I thought you were going to steal mine and you didn't. So I'm going to take Maria Levitt's Porcelain #1 by Ablaze Comics because it's Maria Levitt's and that's all you really need to know. Beryl's life in the desert, living with her aunt and her cat, is relatively simple until the day she finds and enters the dollhouse, stuck inside an ever-changing mystery house that hunts children and turns them into dolls. Beryl goes on a psychedelic journey where she must face the notion of her own limitations and move past them before becoming the building's newest prey.
That sounds insane. It reminds me a little bit of the Dollhouse family.
Yeah, but it's Maria Levitt, so
for sure.
So it could be extra smutty. I was going to talk about that one, Craig, for sure, because that one I'm also looking forward to it, and hopefully it'll make more sense than Psyche did.
Yeah, for sure. But it always takes about to the last issue before I know what she's talking about in the comic.
Yeah, that tracks. I couldn't stay on Psyche. It got weird. It just took me out of it. Matt, did you had a book you looking forward to this next week, brother?
I didn't see any #1s that jumped out to me. I was super pumped about. So I did just want to go ahead and put some more emphasis on the series, The Good Asian. #4 is coming out. This is number 4 in a series of 10. This is Image Comics, written by Pornsak Pichashot, and art is by Alexander Tefengi. It's a 1920s, 1930s set crime story in California. And it's called The Good Asian because it's an Asian American who is the lead detective investigating a series of murders / missing persons. Great story, traditional crime. Not a whole lot of those books come out these days. So if you're into that, I highly recommend this one.
Co-signed. Dude, this book is so stupidly good. For some reason, I don't know that this was, I think I left this one off my spreadsheet because there's no reason that this shouldn't be in my top 5. I just slipped up.
See what happens when you use spreadsheets instead of memory.
I'm not detailed enough. That's what happened. That's what went wrong there. Well, Steve,
I think this is exactly how the Terminator franchise started.
Oh, I don't trust me if the machines rise. I'm just going to quit.
Yeah.
I'm giving up. Like I will do what the machines tell me to. I just don't want to think for myself at this point. And I would commit sins and break laws if I can get a USB port installed in my head, just to make my life easier. Be able to control F the universe. Oh fuck yeah, that'd be awesome. All right. So Steve, are you going with Porcelain #1, or did you have another book that you wanted to toss out and promote?
Well, I did have another #1, thankfully, and this one I forgot that it was coming out next week, but I'm glad I double checked. And it is Not All Robots #1 by AWA, and writer, of course, Mark Russell, who's hilarious and wonderful and thought-provoking. The Flintstones, Second Coming, you just name them all, Billionaires Island, etc. And Mike Deodato Jr. on art. He's been doing a lot of stuff for AWA recently related to the resistance. In this book, it's in the year 2056, robots have replaced human beings in the workforce, and uneasy coexistence develops between the newly intelligent robots and the 10 billion humans living on Earth. Every human family is assigned a robot upon whom they are completely reliant. What could possibly go wrong? Of course. The series itself is a mini-series, I believe 5 issues. Concerns the Walters, a human family whose robot Razorball ominously spends his free time in the garage working on machines, which they're pretty sure are designed to kill them. It looks hilarious. It looks, disturbing in that wonderful Mark Russell way that makes you think. Everything that AWA has put out this year has just been, amazing. I didn't mention them at all on the favorite books, but just name one of them and they're all amazing.
I overlooked this one. I didn't realize this was coming out this coming week. That's an interesting pairing, Mark Russell and Mike Deodato Jr. That's a hell of a man. That's like two opposite ends of a pole coming together there. So that's going to be really interesting.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just as Russell gets satire like most, a lot of other authors just don't.
Exactly.
Oh man, great.
Yeah, he kills it. It on satire.
And speaking of Mark Russell, I don't know if you saw, but it got announced this week that Flintstones is getting a premium, like premier reprinting hardback special super duper deluxe awesome mega hyper awesome edition.
As it absolutely should.
Yeah. Yep. So cannot wait. That's shelf porn. It's going to happen. I just can't wait. So yeah, that's 4 books that you should absolutely go pick up this next week. And who knows, it might be the start or the continuance of the best books of 2021. For those of you who have stuck with us this long, we appreciate it. Thank you. Not only for all 188 episodes of the podcast, but just for us chatting about what we love. Go check out the books we mentioned. They obviously are quality, or you wouldn't be listening to us. But if you want more of what you've heard here, you should 1000% come join us on our Facebook group, where you can find all of us chit-chatting about comics, this, that, and the other. Southern Fried Geekery, just type it in the search bar, will pop up. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those. And if you got any questions, comments, or concerns, maybe you want to drop your top 5, or you're not top 5, just 5 books that you're loving right now in the year of 2021, then you can do so by sending us an email. We're southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. In the meantime, go check out Comic Book Bears, where you can hear Steve on most of the episodes, joined by Bill and Brian, and sometimes by me when I'm not buried underneath a mountain of shit. But other than that, go forth and love yourself some comics.
Second.
Glad that ending got co-signed.